ladies and gentlemen, here we are with another exciting excerpt of the Scouser and the Scot.
Well, today we have what can only be described as another amazing guest, Wayne Doyle from Scarlet Rebels. How the hell are you doing?
I'm all right, mate. How are you? How are you both? Thank you for having me on, first of all.
Mate, it's a pleasure. You've been on the hit list for a while. We wanted to get you on, and now we've got you. So
Yeah.
I've got a few. We've got 10 questions for you.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do is we're just going to crack on, mate, and let's get to the bottom. Let's find out a little bit about Wayne and what he's really like. So
yeah, let's do it.
let's we'll go easy on you, Wayne. Don't you worry.
Yeah, you bring the big guns. I'll try and defend them as much as I can.
Yeah, but let's face it, Wayne, you've got a Scouse and a Scot asking you questions. What could possibly go wrong?
I know. I'll be skint by the end of the day. Yeah.
Hey, what are you saying?
No,
what are you saying?
No stereotyping.
Yeah, you have changed your computer down, haven't you? Even though I am here, I have got powers.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Right, can you give us a bit of background about your early musical life? What kind of music were you into when you started? Like, who were your idols growing up?
It sort of started from I've got an older brother. He's like 2 years older than me, so I think he had like a CD player for Christmas one year, and then he started bringing bands like Guns N' Roses into the house, and then so growing up, my parents were always into Queen, so I always remember having Queen on in the car, and sort of just listening to that while we were going places, and then the Beatles, just all kind of very melodic rock. And then my brother, like I said, the CD player for Christmas, he brought in, so I think it was the Guns N' Roses albums to start with. He put those on and I was like, whoa, what's this? And then it was like Bon Jovi, Keep the Faith. That came on and I was like, just blown away by the melodies, it was that kind of thing. And so it was just very sort of rock music with a melody that would stick in your head, so and then growing up you sort of find your own way, didn't you? So like my brother brought these albums in, these records into the house. I then would sneak into his bedroom and steal them and listen to them, and then and as I sort of grew up and started earning my own money, I'd go and buy like my own sort of things. And then there was things like Oasis were massive at the time, so you can't help but get swayed by that, I guess. But then it always just sort of stayed around that sort of rock, that American, well-produced rock kind of thing, with like Aerosmith, Bon Jovi, Guns N' Roses, and then I got really into Bruce Springsteen, and he is my go-to idol, hero, songwriting sort of hero. Tom Petty as well. Yeah, so things that are like songwriters, that's the craft for me, is to be somebody that writes a song, and then that is more important to me than anything other than like a guitar riff or guitar solo. And I know within Scarlet Rebels we've got that sort of thing in us, because we've got probably one of the best lead guitarists on the scene. But for me, it's all about the songs and the themes behind the songs, and then the and all that kind of thing. And that stems from me listening to Bruce Springsteen, Tom Petty, and then all these other bands I've mentioned. So it's always been around rock. I've never swayed off any, into any sort of other genres. And if it has been, it's been singer-songwriters, that all use acoustic instruments, actual acoustic instruments, as opposed to beats from a computer or whatever, like that kind of thing,
Yeah, I must admit, I've noticed that with your music, with Scarlet Rebels music, that it is quite clearly a lot of melody in there. So
yeah,
kind of knew that you're not a riff band. You know what I mean? Like, I would imagine that the melody means more to you than anything else. So I'm not surprised at your choice. I'm glad to hear you mention Tom Petty, because it's not a name I hear getting mentioned a lot on here when we talk about it. And to me, all right, his voice was an acquired taste for some people, but his songwriting skills and everything was fantastic. I still think he's one of the best he's ever been.
Yeah, I agree. I think with Tom Petty, because like I love Bruce Springsteen, because like you can listen to a Bruce Springsteen song and then you go into it and so it's not, he's not massively tuneful, you know what I mean? It's not this, great sort of, he's got some sing-alongs, but some of his songs are quite, can be quite an acquired taste again. But what I loved about Tom Petty was that, his songwriting craft was the 3.5-minute ones that said as much as anything else, in the lyric of his song, but also massively sort of just crafted so well. And it was like a 3.5-minute pop song of, with just perfect, really, just a perfect kind of example of songwriting.
I think it's
I love it. Yeah,
I think it's interesting as well, Wayne, that when you talk about Tom Petty, I think the giveaway for me was in the argument I always put. If somebody says, "Oh, I just couldn't stand him," I say, if you look at him, he was asked to join the Travelling Wilburys. Now, if you look at everybody that was in the Travelling Wilburys, they were all around that 3-minute pop song. They were all around that 3-minute tune. They were all melody, and it's for him to be counted in among his peers there. That, to me, that's a giveaway. That's
and what a band they were. I'll tell you, with Tom Petty, is how somebody is, whose catalogue is basically nearly untouchable. I went to see him in Hyde Park, the last gig that he did in, it was the last gig that he did in the UK before he passed, sadly. And we were 4 songs in, and I'd had a few too many beers, and I thought, right, I need to go to the toilet. So I was like, 4 songs in, I'm not going to miss anything massively important at this stage. So I run to the toilet, and as I was just about to start weeing, I heard the intro to Won't Back Down. Oh. And I'm like, how is it possible that you can play such a classic that song 4 songs in? I was devastated. So I was like literally squeezing as hard as I could to get back to where I was to, so
you're right.
He's amazing.
Even if you take his greatest hits, there's not many bands or songwriters can put a greatest hits out that every song on it is one that you won't skip. And he's one of the few albums that I've got where I never skip a track on it.
Yeah. I agree.
Right, let's talk about Scarlet Rebels then. It seems
okay
to do. So can you tell us how how, and what drove you to create Scarlet Rebels together?
Okay, so I think it's quite, whether it's known or not, but we were a band called Void. So, when I left school, I basically started a band called Void, and we changed the spelling a few times and stuff. So we were going around as Void, and we used to spell the band name with a 0. So this is really important to new bands, whenever, in my opinion. We were, we went to America, we went all over, through to Europe and doing gigs, supporting people. And the response we would always have would be really positive, but it never translated to anything in terms of sales or Facebook likes or any social media activity, Spotify streams, nothing. And we just didn't understand why. We didn't understand what was going on. We just didn't get it. So we ended up doing, and at the time we were doing a lot of things for free. So because we were just trying to build this reputation, even though it was years in the pipeline, we were doing everything for free just to try and get our name around. And we ended up having a trip to play Hard Rock Hell in Ibiza. And we went out and we did this gig, and we had a lot of people come up to us after it going, "What's the name of the band?" And we were like, Void. And they couldn't find us on their Facebook, on their phones, through Facebook or Google or anything. So I was like, "Give it a year, you're drunk, aren't you? Spell it wrong," whatever. And I typed Void in the way we spelt it, and it didn't come up for me either. So I was like, "Oh, this is a problem." So we just kind of decided then, we need to reset, change the name of the band. So we kind of had a bit of a lineup switch. We got a new lead guitarist in, and then we auditioned a few, and then we had Chris came along, who's our lead guitarist, and then Josh as well came along, and he auditioned. And we kind of thought, we'll just have a bit of a switch up and to change the band from a 4-piece to 5-piece. So then we launched then as searched for ages for a name, and we just tried to make sure that it was unique. So I know there's bands called Scarlet, this, that, and the other, and other bands with the name Rebel in it, but together Scarlet Rebels was unique. And yeah, we just kind of went with that. and just again we just hit the road, started playing under the guise of Scarlet Rebels, and then weirdly we did our first gig. I can't remember where it was. It was in mid Wales somewhere, and the day after, our social media activity was a lot higher than it had been when we were Void. So people were being able to pick us up, were being able to find us. And yeah, I think at that point we were quite long in the tooth, really, as in myself and the members of the band that were in Void with me, and we just kind of thought, well, let's just give it a go as the new, with the new name and the new guys in the band. And we did a stint of gigs and traveling around doing things with anybody who asked us to play. We agreed to do it, so we ended up going on tour with a band called Pissed On from America, who are they're like a proper heavy metal band, and we did stuff with the Heretic Order. They're pretty much a heavy metal band. We just played with anybody and everybody. We just went around doing loads of gigs, and it just sort of built a little bit of a repertoire and a bit of a reputation, I guess, amongst a few people, and we just kicked on from there. We could see very slowly the progress, our Facebook likes going up slowly, and then we started to write music.
Was Void, is the music that you do with Scarlet Rebels similar to what you did with Void? Yeah,
pretty much. Yeah, I mean, again, we still play Void songs in the set, but obviously, I think like the musicians that we've got in Scarlet Rebels are better. So we added a better lead guitarist, and then Josh as well can play guitar and piano. So we've added that to our repertoire if needs be, But the songs were similar, I mean, I think I'm getting better as a songwriter as I'm getting older. So I think the songs are better and perhaps better crafted and everything. But in essence, it's all rock guitars with big choruses and quite melodic. Yeah, but we just added that extra bit of guitar in and that kind of thing. So it's working, and like I said, it's been a long time coming for a lot of us, because we tried everything when we were Void, and the obvious was staring at us and we just ignored it. Bands that spell their band's name with really weird spelling or with a number in it or anything like that, unless it's an obvious number. But we were spelled Void with a 0, so it's V0ID, and how on earth is anybody going to find you? It's just, when it was presented to me in black and white, and it was like a light had been switched on, just like bing. I was like, oh,
wait. One of the things what you've just said, it's quite interesting actually, right? Because you do see bands coming up with strange names, putting little logos, emojis, whatever you want to put in them, and you've just said it there. It's quite clear, like, you know what I mean. That if people can't find it, it's not gonna work.
Yeah,
and
it's
obviously you found out when you couldn't find it yourself on someone else's phone. Did you ever look into it? Why, like, you know what I mean? Why it wasn't coming up, or did you just think, guys, we've got to stop this now and change it? Or was
there was a few instances. I mean, Void it's a really popular band name. There was so many bands called Void, and there was a little bit of stubbornness in me, kind of going, I'm going to make it stick. I'm going to be we're going to be the ones that break out and go massive. And, well, that is what it was initially in my head. And then it just kind of, like, these people who were saying, we can't find you. And it wasn't just the one, it was a lot of people. And I was going, so when I was putting it into my phone, because I knew what I was looking for, and obviously the history on my phone, it was just picking it up straight away. But from somebody's phone, fresh, brand new, it just wasn't a thing. So I was like, oh, this is worrying. How were people meant to find us? And, we were going to gigs, and like our management at the time was saying that we needed to sort of, make sure that we tell the fan, the people at the gig, this is how we spell the band name. And I'm thinking, people are out there having a good time. They don't want to know how to spell, what I mean? It's like, it's just so counterintuitive to having fun.
Do you know what?
Giving people
it's a great point. So anyone who's watching this, make sure you test it, not on your phone, not on your laptop. Go and find some internet cafe or something like that. Type it in. If you can't find it, it's not working. So
do you know something? And I think it's a really strange thing to say, right? Because when we decided we were going to be Scarlet Rebels, it was really odd. We were like, oh, it doesn't, you know, but people don't care. They don't care what your band name is. They just care they want to find you. So like one of the most random, you know, band names you could come up with, like Henry's Funeral Shoe. You know, it's like just 3 words that are just stuck together, but they were unique so people could find them. And like, I think sometimes people try to overcook it, try to be a bit clever with it by using spelling, you know, weird spellings, or it just doesn't work. It does not work nowadays. You know, the most important thing for a band is social media, Spotify, etc., etc. You could have the best songs in the world. If people can't find you on social media, I genuinely trust. It took me years to learn it, and this is the first thing that I'd say to anybody is just make yourself accessible, because otherwise, there's no point. There's
and
no
the
point.
the other key thing is as well, if you're choosing a name and there's another band already out there that's actually quite successful, that can cause problems. And the other thing, if you pick a name and you go on it, there's like 17 different bands all called the same name. You know, it's like you said, Wayne. It's don't try to be clever. Just think about it. It is just a name. If you think of some of the most successful bands in the history of time, the names meant nothing until the band called themselves that, and then it just became that's Led Zeppelin. You know, that's Black Sabbath. That, you know, I mean, that's Uriah Heep, for God's sake, or Jethro Tull. It meant bugger all. They just stuck a name on it. You know.
And that's it. I think, like you said, you know, you can think and overcook it for ages and try to be clever with it, but you know, just being unique. When you've searched that band name in Spotify, they're the only band that comes up. When you've put it into Facebook, you're the only, you know, because there are bands that will have, you know, names that have got that you know, somebody in America's got the same name. So then there's bands over here, really good bands, really, you know, and they're sort of handles on Facebook and stuff like such and such UK and all this kind of thing. And it's like, well, I don't know. It's just, for me, it just makes more sense to just be, you know, the only one on the block. And then the people can try it after it, but like with us, we were, you know, we're the only ones that own ScarletRebels.com, and we've got the @Scarlet Rebels. You know, there's nothing else on the end of it on Facebook and Twitter and stuff. So, you know, we were the first to sort of come up with that. So I just think that's really important in my experience anyway, you know. And
it's a good point, mate, and it's the first time anybody's actually made it on this show. So that's cool.
Nice one for that, Wayne. Obviously you were signed with TMR Management.
Yeah.
Can you talk us through how that came about? When it happened, bud?
Yeah, of course. So I remember when we were Void, I sent Peter you know, our stuff, and I was like, you know, I think I saw that he was advertising for new bands that he wanted to work with, so I sent him our stuff, and he came back to me with a polite no, and like, no, you know. So I was like, oh, okay, fair enough. But then about a year later, he tagged the band in a post at the time saying that he'd just discovered, you know, some Void material, and how come nobody's ever heard them before, blah blah blah. And then we started chatting, and he came to see us in Birmingham, and it was around the time we were changing the name of the band. So I was like, we're about to change the name of the band, and we're about to go recording our new material, which became our first album, Show Your Colours. So he was like, okay, so he was interested, and I was like, I don't want to work with somebody just by saying right now, you know, you think whatever. I was like, I'd rather you hear what it is you're going to be working with. So it kind of sat on ice for a while, and that was due to us, because I didn't want somebody to sign us without knowing what it was that they would be working with, you know, material wise, you know. So we were in the middle of recording that, and the minute it was finished, I sent it across to him and I said, this is what we're working with, you know, what do you think? And then he came to see us again at a gig, and we sat down and had a chat, you know, about what we expected and what he expected, and you know, how things could work, and yeah, we agreed on it, and it's been great, you know. It's been really good. He's been really helpful. It's been good. Yeah, it's been a good relationship, I think, for both of us. I'd like to think, but certainly for us as a band, it's helped. Yeah. definitely.
I think one of the things that I'd like to talk about, I mean, obviously I could give you my chapter and verse, what I believe, but bearing in mind that this show is mainly aimed at new young bands or new bands that don't know this information that we know collectively. So one of the things I'd like to ask you to explain for your perspective as a band is, what do you expect from your management? You know, because some people think they want management and it's just about booking gigs for them, you know, and it depends.
Yeah.
But from your perspective as a band, what does Peter do for you? And what made you decide? Oh, sorry, how does that come across in real terms? What difference does it make to you guys?
Well, it's funny because I think I'm the person that will, I'm the person that will do the businessy side of the band for the band. So the rest of the band are like, why is he not getting us more gigs and stuff? Whereas the reality of it is that, like you said, the actual role is a lot more. Since he started working with us, we've become, we registered as an actual trading company. He does all the infrastructure on our website. He handles a lot of the merch orders that come in. He does the usual like booking gigs. But the biggest thing he's done is actually just give us a platform to bounce ideas off, to speak to. We've had some episodes this year, which we'll probably go into a bit later on, where he's been unbelievably helpful in terms of going through contractual things and all that kind of thing. So, before we signed with him, where there was a lot of gigs and stuff we were doing for free, but since the band pays for itself now, we don't make any money, but we don't lose any money either. We don't make a lot of money as the band, but before he sort of got involved with us, we were paying for our own petrol, our own hotels, our own food, etc. But now, anything that we do, if we go out, all that costs are covered due to the fact that we've put things in place, and people's helped to put things in place, which is just made us, more professional in that way, So it's just, it's just an all-encompassing, thing of managing all the different things and issues and problems that come up, and advising on contracts as well as looking for opportunities as well. So he's been great. He's been really, really good. I think if I look at now where we were when we signed with them to where we are now, there's no doubt we've made progress. So
and that's progress as well. When the world stood still for 16 months,
Yeah, and I think
I mean. It's not that there's that needs to be said as well. So that's cool.
Yeah. It's probably the toughest job in the world because I get it, because I think I was always doing the role beforehand in terms of you find somebody's contact details, you put this email together, ring to speak to somebody, and the only thing that you can do as a manager is put that artist's material in front of somebody, and then those gatekeepers will turn around and go, okay, or no. There's no in between, and then obviously it's down to that person had to come back to say, this time is a no, you didn't get that slot, you didn't get that, like we were saying about Steelhouse, there's 3 opening slots for 700 bands, so that's, you've got to be really, really fortunate to get picked for one of those, and whatever it is that, these different festivals and people are looking for, so it's hard, it's always going to be more no's than yes, but it's not as simple as even signing with record labels and stuff. It's not as simple as going, now with this company or with this manager. It's, the world is going to blow open. It doesn't. Those people in those positions are still the ones that are giving the yeas and the nays, really. So but you've got to be in it to win it, haven't you? So I think there's a lot more precedence and kudos coming from an established band manager asking, we've got this band, can you play blah 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 blah, rather than the singer of the band going, hey, we're the best band in the world, give us a shot, sort of thing. So it's just helped. It's just been a massive help. Yeah.
I agree with that. Rightly or wrongly, there's two things will happen. If the band sends something in, then it might not be taken seriously because it's just a member of the band, or worse, they think it's an opportunity to rip the band off because they'll play for nothing or very little. And it's getting that. I mean, I'm glad that you spoke about Peter in the way that you've done, because people don't understand that literally a band manager's job is to take care of business. So when I talk to bands, I say, what is it you're weak at? What is it you don't enjoy doing? What is it you think that needs to be done better than you do currently? And then I'll look at it and go, can I help them with any of that? If the answer is yes, great. If the answer's no, then it's a bad fit, guys. I'm sorry, but you better go on someone else. And not every band's ready for a manager. And not every band needs a manager. You know?
No.
We've talked to some like Matt at Twisted Illusion. Christ, he doesn't need a manager. He manages himself, and nobody could keep up with what he does for himself. So he doesn't need it. 100% doesn't need it. But there are a lot of bands that do because they don't understand business.
Yeah. Can you imagine trying to manage Matt from a Twisted Illusion though? That would be fun, wouldn't it?
Somebody asked me, why don't you go on well when why don't you manage him? I'm like, fuck off. I love him. I said I'd still like to count him as a friend.
Yeah, do you know what though? I mean, again, you know, he's knocking it out the park, you know, with what he's doing, and it's so admirable, you know. And I've watched the episodes you've done with him, and it's, you know, it's brilliant. But like I said, for us, I think it just worked, you know, with Peter. It just worked. I mean, like we had a band manager as Void, you know, and always, you know, people's hearts in the right places and stuff. I'm not saying that wasn't, but the advice that our old manager gave us was spell the band name with a zero, because a zero is nothing and a void is nothing, and then you can use, so, you know, from a PR perspective and a storytelling perspective, it all ties in. And that was the advice that he gave, and ultimately that is what held us back for years and years. Literally is what held us back, you know, the fact that nobody could find us on these platforms we were sitting on. So it's not you know, it's not a silver bullet. It never will be a silver bullet. But like you said, he's put things in place now where it's a lot easier now for us to say, like, you know, we're going to Scotland on the weekend and that, and, you know, we're going to be going up to Scotland knowing that we're not putting our own hand in our pocket. It's all being paid for by what we're doing. So, and that in some respect is a massive success compared to where we were coming from, because we were doing everything for nothing. You know, we were paying for the petrol ourselves, paying for hotels if it was that far away. You know, we were doing everything and paying everything out of our own pockets, but that isn't the case anymore. You know, and there's the obvious roles as well. So yeah, it's, you know, he's been great. He's been great.
There's got to be a relationship there, though. There's got to be trust. There's got to be some kind of, like, as you say, camaraderie, where you actually know where both parties are. You're talking regularly. You're actually communicating on an open and honest level.
Yeah,
Which takes me to the next question, which is, you have a brand new album coming out soon.
Yeah.
See Through Blue. Can you talk us through how you guys wrote the songs? What was the actual process? How did you start them? How did you finish them? Especially with what's gone on over the last few years. We've been locked down and stuff like that. So
yeah, of course. So we'd signed to a record label in Greece called Earache Records. This was before Peter got involved with us. So we'd been Void for a while, and we wanted to. We put a lot of music out that nobody had ever heard before, and we sort of looked at their sort of track record, and we thought, you know, releasing music with them would be better than doing it off our own back, because it was like our decision to do that, or my decision to do that then. So we signed with them, and we released our first album, Show Your Colours, with them, and then we were contracted to deliver an album to them by the end of last year. So we were on tour with Revival Black at the start of last year. We were doing the Rising tour. So we'd released out the album in 2019. We gigged extensively for the rest of that year, from August, I think it was. We gigged pretty much all year. And then we did the Rising tour at the start of 2020, and literally every single weekend from the middle of January up until May, I think we had gigs Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and a mix of in between. And obviously COVID happened, so we were in the middle of this tour. COVID happened, bang. So we couldn't gig, we couldn't write anything during the sound checks, we couldn't rehearse. Everything in Wales closed down, and Wales was much tighter lockdown than it was, I think it was anywhere else past Scotland, possibly, certainly more than England anyway. So we couldn't rehearse, and we had an album to deliver by the end of the year. So yeah, it was difficult. So the plan was that we were going to write the composition of a song every rehearsal that we had every week throughout the year until we started recording. But obviously that was taken away from us. So basically we booked studio time. We could only go in there like 1 or 2 at a time. So we started recording, and I said to the boys, we've got this album to deliver. Anybody that wants to contribute to the songwriting, you need to come into the studio on one of these 3 days, pick a day, and then you will need to record the composition of the song as a guide, and then from there we would build it up. So the idea was, like I said, to write everything together, but it ended up basically myself, Josh, and Chris all wrote different songs, and then we went into the studio, we recorded the composition of it, just one guitar on a guide track to a click track, and then once all those songs were done, we give it to our drummer to listen to for a week, and then he went in and recorded the drums on it. So we built it step by step. So then we did that. Our bassist came in, he put his lines down, and then the rhythm guitar went on, and then everything else went on. And then all the while, for the songs that I didn't write the composition for, I took those demos home, and then I wrote the melody and the lyrics whilst listening to them on headphones, basically. So it's a totally different way of us doing it.
Wayne, how did it compare? You know, like I'm talking here personally and as a band. Did it make it? It would obviously be different. Do you feel it helped the songwriting any? Do you think it hindered it? Do you think it was more enjoyable, less enjoyable doing it that way?
I don't know. From my perspective, I think it's the best things I've ever written. I think it's lyrically and certainly melodically. We didn't have as much time to add things when we were recording, so it's I think there's a bit of vibrancy about it. But in terms of, I think ideally, we wanted to do it together so that everybody knew what the plan was when we were going in to record, just to press record. But it just wasn't feasible. So it was, it just kind of just made us kind of go, or made me go, we've pulled it out the bag, really. And yeah, I just think it was something that we delivered, when it was looking a bit ropey for a bit, but we did manage to do something. And I think what we've done is better than what we've done before. So I would prefer the next one to do it. We would do it together, like the original plan, though, just to see how that goes, because we've not. The first album that we did with Scarlet Rebels, Show Me Colours, was 3 or 4 songs that we'd written together as everybody's in the band now. But the majority of that album are songs that I'd written for the Next Void album. So there was a bit of a mix. So then again, everybody's, it's people that have contributed, a full song, pretty much a few full songs on See Through Blue, but it wasn't done, together. It was difficult. We tried all the WhatsApp things and sending this, that, and the other back and forth, but in the end, I just kind of went, right, you come in on Friday, go into the recording studio, and like the boys coming down, and they were like, they were just naming some of the songs, like just whatever it was, and I was trying to sort of take the titles, the working titles, and incorporate them into the song somehow. And it was a cool way of doing it, from a songwriting point of view, from my sort of picking up the melodies and the lyrics and stuff, you know. Yeah, so it was good. I think it's turned out really well. Yeah, so
I must admit, I can't remember which band it was that I spoke to, and they'd done the same thing. I think it might have been Ash and Reach or somebody like that. And they were saying that they actually feel that the recording process, although it wasn't as enjoyable, what's actually come out the other end, they're more than happy with, because they actually had more time than you would do if you were out gigging all the time, etc., etc. And you know, and I think that there is an element of that to it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there was no lack. I mean, we were on a time scale, so you know, I think we started recording in September, and we pretty much did every weekend until the end of the year to get it finished. And we did get it finished by the end of the year by the scrape of our teeth. Not that it mattered in the end, but yeah, we did get it done. So,
so obviously you signed to Earache Records,
yeah,
which is pretty cool. How the hell did that happen? How did that come out? And can we ask what the script is with it? Are you signed to them for X amount of records, or?
Yeah, so so basically, like I said, we were signed to a company in Greece called Rock of Angel Records, and we were signed into them for an extra 2 albums. So when everything was finished, we'd been speaking to them about the fact that I felt that, you know, this album needed to have some sort of it needed to, at least for us to attempt, you know, to hit some sort of level that of I don't know. Basically, we wanted to try and attempt to get something in the charts, you know. So whether that would be like a long pre-release campaign, which we are doing at the moment, and selling the album through a recognized chart of retailer, you know, so that whatever you sell gets counted towards the charts at the end of it. And we were trying to have these conversations with them, and obviously, you know, the concept of the pre-release campaign was it just wasn't in their remit really. So I think I just didn't want to basically give away what we were doing to repeat what we've done with the first album, which went down really well, you know, sold well enough, but it didn't really raise our profile to the point where, you know, where anything was massively different. And not that that wasn't okay for the first album, but I just didn't want to do the same thing for the second. I was kind of like, we need to try and make this stick somewhere, you know, even if it's a UK top 20 rock album or whatever it is, a top 100 album, we need to try and get something tangible out of it, you know. And it was just difficult to have the sort of those conversations. Brexit was coming into it in my mind as well, to do with, you know, deliveries in terms of, you know, they would get the stock to us and everything. And so we kind of finished the album up, and I just spoke to them about it, and I said, look, you know, I'd like us to sort of be able to not release this with you, you know, because we seemed to be on different pages, and, you know, we had a lot of chat about it, and then we went through a lot of things, you know, in terms of getting ourselves out of that deal. So, and it was quite awkward. It was financially, you know, we took quite a hit financially, but I just felt that the body of work that we created was something that needed to be done, because it's the best thing I think we've ever written. So, you know, we just needed to back ourselves in that respect, I think. And then we managed to agree a deal where that would leave us basically not having to fulfill the rest of that contract. And bear in mind, it was a contract that we signed before we'd got involved with Peter, and I'm sure if Peter was involved, then maybe that would have been advised against, or not so much against, but there would have been, you know, some more discussion around it rather than me just jumping in two-footed. Anyway, so that was put to bed. We were then free to shop the album around, and we'd spoken to Earache previously. They came to see us just before lockdown on the Rising tour, and then weirdly, it just didn't amount to anything. they give us really good feedback and stuff, but it never amounted to an offer. Which is probably good looking at it now, because the world stopped, and I think like had we signed something, and then there would have been a lot of pressure on us having to do stuff without there being a lot of things that you can do in a closed market almost. So then basically I just sent it across to Digby Pearson, and I just said, this is the link to the album. Do you want to, let me know what you think? And he came back and he said that he loved it. And we started to speak about, if we were going to sign or whatever. So it was a lot of chats and Zoom meetings back and forth with them. And we agreed then, for us to release it with them. And I think from our point of view, with what happened with the deal previously with Raw being tied in, we just wanted to do one. So just to see how it goes. So we've just signed for this one album, and we'll see how that goes, because not that we don't want to be tied in, but we just wanted to see how this one went. And I think it suited them as well, because I think when they've got, bands like Massive Wagons and Those Damn Crows and the Dust Coder, and they've all done really well, but perhaps they were a little bit further up the chain than what we are, possibly. So, or definitely in a couple of examples. So yeah, so that it was just one of those. Because of that relationship we had before, I just sent it across to them to see what they thought, and they really liked it. And then I spoke to Tom, the label manager. We had conference calls with Digby and Peter and myself, and then the team, and then eventually we agreed to sign towards the back end of February, I believe it was. And then we started to work then on what the track listing was going to be and what the artwork was going to look like and all that kind of thing. So yeah, it was.
It's an interesting conversation that I have regularly with bands, both the ones that I work with and ones that I don't work with. And I think one of the things I'd like you to sort of talk through, because there's some bands that we don't want a record deal because they just rip you off. They just do this, they just do that. You've got others that think it's the holy grail and that it will basically make them famous, like it used to do in the 60s and 70s. And I think in a lot of cases, new and young bands like we mentioned before that's watching this, from your perspective, even when you went to Rock of Angels Records and then obviously now with Earache, what do you think that, or what do you know that being in a record label brings for you? What's the pros and the cons of it, do you think, in a best case scenario?
Yeah, product and know-how, I guess. I mean, like, a lot of the thing now is vinyl, isn't it? And so like when we signed with Rock of Angels, they paid for all the stock, and all that kind of thing. They made the albums up, so it meant that we didn't have to fork out up front for that. I think give us budgets to videos and stuff like that, so that was helpful. There's we had quite a lot of press for the first album in Germany and stuff like that, so it just helps, with know-how. And similarly with the Earache, they, like, I'm in a WhatsApp group with the whole team. We've had countless meetings. It's just know-how. It literally is just know-how and advice and that kind of thing. But what it has shown is that even with Earache, just because you signed to them doesn't mean that things are just going to, they're just going to drop into your lap. Because again, we've been on that side of the coin where we think, this is going to be good, perhaps this will happen. And, up to press, there's still things which just aren't falling as you'd like them to fall, so it's just one of those things, you just got to be just mindful of it. I mean, from our point of view, we've seen, what the work that Earache had done with Massive Wagons, Those Damn Crows, the Dust Coder, Rival Sons, and they've got a really good track record of breaking, new rock bands and stuff. So that's kind of what we were hoping would happen, and hope will happen. There's no guarantee of it, there's no guarantee of it of anything. So we're just working as hard as we can and just taking that advice on that they provided us. So they're much more hands-on than what Rock of Angels Records were, though, or you know, the work that we're doing with each other at the moment. But like you say, you know, I totally understand the DIY side of it and not wanting to be ripped off and stuff. But from my perspective, after being in a band for so long, the only thing that I really want to get out of it is my music to be heard by as many people as possible. And if I was to be really greedy, it would be to make a comfortable living out of being in a band. And when I say comfortable, I mean, you know, my mortgage to be paid and, you know, being able to afford to eat. You know, I don't ever envisage, you know, being able to drive any sort of, not even a Rolls Royce, but even a mini Metro into a pool. You know, it's just not, the money isn't there, you know. So
clean up a job on it would be a nightmare anyway, mate.
yeah, I know.
It'd just be a pain in the ass.
I know.
I tried it once. I tried it once. It was overrated.
Yeah. you know what I mean. No, you know, like there is, you know, there's just that, you know, it's not that there's not money in there or whatever, but I just think, you know, the days of, you know, bands breaking, you know, in as many bands that used to break years ago, you know, there might be one or two that'll explode, but I just think from our point of view, if we could, you know, just be relevant for a few years and just be able to do it as much as we can, and then that would be classed as a success, I think. So it depends what you want. It totally depends what you want. But again, it isn't a silver bullet. Is, you know, it just, they don't exist. You know, they really, unless you are really, really lucky, they just do not exist. Those silver bullets, regardless of who you're working with.
No, it makes perfect sense. Absolutely perfect sense. So obviously the last year and a half, maybe a bit longer now, since lockdown one, how's it affected your plans? I don't want to say the COVID word because I think it's pissed off so many musicians, so many of the arts, so many of everything. How are the band coping? How have they coped with it?
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? It's, you know, it's been difficult because it's, you know, the thing that you kind of work towards and all that kind of thing just got taken away. I mean, like, you know, like I said, we were in the middle of the rising tour. We had at least half of the dates, or just under half of the dates left to do. And it was, you know, we were in Swansea actually when it happened, and we were taking the drum kit around. So it's Ashes from Revival Black's drum kit. And we were taking the kit around, and we'd sold, the last date was, I think it was like the 14th of March. And we had sold more tickets than the people than were in the audience. And we'd taken a lot on the doors and money on the door as well. So a lot of people just didn't come to the show. Like, you know, people who bought tickets probably just thought they just didn't want to risk it. So we were stood there, like, and I was looking at them going, you should take your drum kit, boys, because I don't think next week's going to happen. And they were like, yeah, of course it will. It'll be fine. And then on the Monday, literally everything was cancelled. So we lost out in doing all those shows. And you never know what will come off the back of those shows that you're doing. We lost out on, well, literally everything. I mean, it was the same for everybody, but we had a lot of gigs cancelled.
Merch sales and everything, isn't it? As well?
Yeah, merch sales. Yeah, and you know, you put money into merch. I know Revival Black had a tour tee, you know, so the Rising Tour T-shirt with all the dates on the back, and you know, you put money into merch, and then you know, you can't sell it, and you try to put it on your website, but then, you know, you've got every single band in the world doing the same thing, and then you had, you know, people doing Facebook live streams and all this kind of thing, and I was just like looking at it going, I didn't want to get into like a bun fight with other bands going like, you know, don't watch their stream, watch our stream, because everybody was competing for the same thing, you know, like Facebook Live. And so I just sat and just carried on writing songs, and then we got the opportunity to do the New Wave of Classic Rock fest that they started doing. And at the time, it was in the middle of the year last year, and we ended up going into a local recording studio where we recorded for both albums. And we just basically set a few cameras up and then recorded our live set into his desk, into Tim's desk, who runs Sonic One Studios. And then we played, and then we left. And and we hadn't played. I think this was in July, and we hadn't played since we were on the Rising Tour in March. So I don't think we'd even seen each other since. So we went in, we did this live set of like 7 songs, and then we left so that he could get on with mixing them. And then he sent them through to me, and I listened to them. I was like, wow, this sounds great. So we released that then as an EP, and put it onto Spotify and things like that. And then that went out on the New Wave of Classic Rock web fest they were doing. But that was it, really. That was literally it. And then obviously we needed to record the album. But to say what we've missed out on is we had a hometown show which has been rescheduled 3 times now, in a theatre, a local theatre, and I think we've sold like 200 and odd tickets for it. And yeah, just all those experiences and everything we missed out on. But it's the same for everybody, so we can't really mourn. Everybody's in the same boat. So fingers crossed it just doesn't happen again. Because I think if things get pulled again, then I don't know. Because everything was on the breadline anyway in terms of live music venues. Everything was struggling even prior to COVID. So I don't know, it's a scary one.
Actually, I've just, as you're talking about that too, but you were doing with Revival Black. It's just reminded me, and that's who it was that talked about how they felt that the recording actually helped them record better stuff. It was Daniel.
It was Dan, wasn't it?
Yeah. I knew it was a Scouse band. I just got the wrong one to start with. But yeah, it was actually Daniel, when we interviewed him, mentioned that it had been a strange thing, but in actual fact, in some ways it had. I mean, if you look at it that way, I think a lot of bands just focus on gigging. Gigging is be all and end all. But the reality of it is a lot of the gigs that you'll be doing, the return on the investment's not very good. And in actual fact, the bands that have reset themselves over the lockdown, potentially a lot of them have put themselves in a much better place than they would have done, and have actually written better songs and recorded better songs than they may have done if they'd just been out gigging every weekend. So yeah, I think I always tend to look in things and go, right, so that didn't happen, but this did. And like you said, Wayne, you feel that this album that's coming out is the best stuff you've ever done. You know, and there is a thought pattern which could have been, it may not have been as good as that if you hadn't had what you had to do.
Do you know what? You're right, because I was looking at the calendar, kind of looking, thinking, where are we going to get the opportunity to sit down and and write songs, and certainly for myself, because we could have come up with a composition in a rehearsal or whatever, and then it would be down to me then to go away and to pick the lyrics up and the melodies and stuff. And had that not happened, had COVID not happened, then the material that I've written about wouldn't be relevant. And I think that is why, to be honest with you, Earache have been interested because of the songs I've written in terms of the content and the lyrical themes and stuff. Just something that I think slightly separated us from a lot of the other bands and what they're singing about, So, and that only came about because of what I was watching going on during the pandemic, So, so it's, like I said, it's 100%. Had it not happened, perhaps other doors would have opened, and we'd be in a totally different spot now. But not to say there would be a better one than what we're currently in. So, yeah, it's interesting. Sliding doors and all that.
So the last question, my man, is, can you talk us through, in fact, I was going to say 3 things, but the short and the medium term and longer term goals for the band, or plans for the band, I should say.
So obviously we've got our new album out, which is out for pre-order right now. So we're going to be dropping singles and all that kind of thing on the lead up to it. So the album is called See Through Blue, and it's available for pre-order. And from that, we're going to drop a few singles and videos and stuff like that. We've got gigs. We're going to be going on tour with Buckcherry in November and December this year, touch wood, if everything is still able to go ahead. We've got a few festival dates. So obviously we're doing Wildfire again, you're doing Southfest. And then we've just been asked today to do something which would be really, really cool if it comes off. But I'm probably not allowed to say what that is. So fingers crossed that happens. medium term, it's all about the album. We're going to be touring it next year, early next year. We're going to be going out the week of its release. So the album is out January the 28th next year. So we've got like a long pre-order campaign to try and shift as many orders as we can leading up to that, to try and break that UK top 40 album chart. And then anything after that, I like long term, I just hope we're still around. But like I said,
yeah, it's true that though, isn't it? It is.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to push things that far ahead because, you know, I'd love it to be that we're still writing, recording, and performing. But there's been so many occasions that I've been on the verge of going, do you know what, this ain't working. It's not worth the heartache, the letdown, the constant sort of, rug pulling at people, not, on purpose, but the amount of times that the rug has been pulled from under your feet. And I just, I would love to sit here and say that, we want to be the biggest band in the world, but, the chances of that happening are so slim. Like I said, I'd be happy with just, being able to pay my mortgage. But as long as we're still doing it in a few years, and, if people want to hear an album after this one, then that for me is success, I think. Because I think we still got a lot of life in us, but it just depends on how things, on how everything rolls, really. So yeah, certainly short and medium is all about the album, and then we'll see what happens with this album and what we can do long term. So yeah, I'm being a bit cagey, I know, but it's
true. Listen, mate, I'm just glad that you're being truthful and that you're being pragmatic, because the truth of the matter is, you have to be pragmatic, because if we'd been doing this interview 18 months ago, 2 years ago, you'd have been saying next year we'll have an album out, and then fucking COVID would have come.
Yeah.
And that would, you know what I mean? So that's
no, you're right. Yeah.
Nepotism, you're quite right.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, I just, from our point of view, we just, like I said, we just want to play, and my ultimate thing is just for people to hear what we've done, and that's it. We just want to play for people to sort of engage, as many people as possible to engage with our music. And, I'd love to be the next, whatever it is, but, those, for things like that to happen, it's all luck, right place, right time, and everything being aligned. So we've got a really good team behind us now. We've got really, we've got some really good songs on the album. I think, we're a half decent live band, so there's no reason why it can't. But like you said, nobody would have foreseen the last 18 months anyway. So we're just going to keep working hard. That's all we're going to do, is just keep working hard and keep pushing and see what it takes us. Yeah.
Cool. Do you know what? That leads us nicely to the end, mate. So Wayne, like always, as you know very well, if you've seen the show, which you know you have, I'm the cheeky Scouser. I will always ask one more question because I'm greedy like that. Give us your links, mate. Come on, give us your links. How do people come and see Scarlet Rebels? How do we find out when the new music's dropping and stuff like that? So give us your links.
Okay, so it's quite easy, really. So we're scarletrebels.com. On Facebook, it's at Scarlet Rebels. On Twitter, it's at Scarlet Rebels. And you can pre-order See Through Blue from earache.com/Scarlet Rebels. So quite simple, straightforward links, which is the benefit of being, a band with a different name.
I wondered how you were going to come back to that one, dude.
What I'll do for you, Wayne, I'll put all the links down below. So guys, check out Scarlet Rebels. These are absolutely legends, top quality band. I'm looking forward to seeing them this Saturday at Wildfire as well, where I'll be sharing the stage with you. So it'll be good.
Yeah, man, can't wait. Yeah, it'll be good to catch up. Yeah, cool.
Definitely. So like you say, come and say hello to us at Wildfire. We'll have a laugh. We'll have a scream. It'd be great to catch up to everyone. Last thing though, John, over to you, mate.
Well, I'd just like to thank Wayne for the time and for his sharing the time with us and giving an insight into what it's like to be in Scarlet Rebels. It's really cool. And that's what this is all about. So until next time, you know what to do. Hit that cowbell and subscribe.